New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Dr. Robert with you over here.
Rev Z right here.
And this is New Thought Today for Tuesday, the 26th of March here on the New Thought Media Network. So very grateful that you are with us. Please do feel free to chime along, chat along. Let us know you're out there. Drop a comment in the comment box as we go along. Been a couple weeks since we've been here due to travel different things and some technical difficulties last week. So it's good to be back. Z, good to see you again, sir.
Good to be here. Good to be here. You know, we missed the snow. Well, we got a little bit yesterday, but we missed the big snow, I think. And so it's good to be back in the saddle again after shoveling and all of that good stuff.
Oh yeah. I did hear a rumor of a chance of another little push of snow coming through later this evening, so we'll have to see what happens there. And it hasn't gotten really warm enough to melt out yet, so I'm a little extra on top won't hurt anybody.
Yep. Springtime in the Rockies.
Exactly. And all right, now thank you. You opened me up to the perfect segue because I want to say thank you to you again. I used that joke about springtime in the Rockies at Center for Spiritual Living Denver this past Sunday. If you don't know the joke, springtime in the Rockies means that it can be summer in the morning and winter in the afternoon, or the other way around. But it's never really springtime. It's either just summer or winter and summer, one way or the other. But it was a really great experience and a really great time to be with the Center for Spiritual Living Denver community. You're the senior minister there now. And we both have long-running history at different times and at different periods over the last, 10, 15 years now, maybe. Supporting that community and that center. It always feels a little bit like coming home when I get a chance to be there with you guys. And we were talking about what's next. And that's what we want to talk about again today, folks, is what's next for New Thought. And, I got to say, it's always a little, I don't want to say scary, but it's always just a little bit on the edge when, as a guest speaker myself, when you walk into a community and part of your message is, stuff's broken and we got to fix it. And not saying it directly that way and finding a way to weave together a call to a vision of a future without making what we're doing and what's happening right now in the moment wrong. And I trust I did a fairly decent job of walking that line with you guys on Sunday, Z.
I would say so. Yeah, I think it was perfect in terms of how do we begin there's a popular book out now and by Dr. Sean Ginwright, and I think last month's edition of the Science of Mind magazine, he was there on one. I forget which was the last one or not. Yeah, 4 pivots, right? And the first pivot that the first pivot that comes up is we have to move from a lens to a mirror, right? And I think what you brought up was, we have these lens. We've been doing lens work all the while. We have this lens, and we're looking at things, and we're operating on them, or we're speaking about them, or to them, or whatever the case may be. But now there's a chance and a need to pivot and do some mirror work or some reflection work to see what's there, right?
Right.
And I love, given that this is March Madness time of year, the whole idea of pivoting is 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 pretty key right now. Um, and the one thing that you learn from basketball in terms of a pivot is you stop, right? Now, you momentarily stop. You take an inventory, or you look at your surroundings. Then you assess your resources, and then you can make a small pivot and then move the ball forward by passing it, making a connection, establishing relationships. And I think that's a great metaphor for where we are today in New Thought. And quite frankly, in spiritual communities, regardless of their
Yeah.
traditional base,
Yep.
is that we are looking at the world through our lenses, and we're not getting the reflection back from what's out there per se, and we got to learn to pivot.
Yeah. I love that. And because to me, the pivot also means, okay, as you said, I've stopped. I'm planting a foot here. And there is going to be a shift in direction. I don't always know which way it is. You don't go into the pivot, I'm going to pivot to the right because this guy always runs to the left. That might be the time he runs to the right. So you got to make that decision once you've planted, and we're going to call it, right, planted that flag. Once you've planted that flag, then then the split second decision comes through to say, okay, we're going to go this way and hand this off this way, push this that way, pass the ball into that person or in that direction. And the lens is so focused, where the mirror shows us more than maybe we think we're going to see. You look in the mirror, you think you're going to look at your hair, but you start to notice what's behind you in the mirror, and you start to notice other things depending on which, how big of a mirror it is, a little convex, a little concave. Maybe it's one of those old, one of those old mirrors in the fun house that make you look funny, but one way or the other, what we see in the mirror is the outpicturing of what we've been holding as truth. And I think I'm with you in a lot of ways. Not just New Thought communities, but communities of all stripes and all colors and all faith traditions, I think, are facing this same well, I want to call it an impulse. There's a great shift in consciousness that has happened over the last 4 years. There's no question about it. None of us are who we were back in 19. I was working on an article for a piece that I need to submit, and was reflecting back a little bit on where my life and where my ministry was back in 2018 and 2019. And there's no question that what I was doing then really in no way relates to what I'm doing today. And what's emerged today is directly influenced by the events of 2020. We're still feeling the repercussions of a global shutdown and a global rewiring of how we do church, or not.
Yeah. Well, and I think it affects all spheres, right? Because I was doing some looking back. I was looking for something, and I pulled out an article that was from 2013, Okay, now I'm going way
Okay.
back before pandemic, 2013, and the article
More
was
than a
talking
decade.
about, yeah, yeah, what are we going to do with the millennials? Right? The millennials at 10 years ago, the millennials were coming into the workforce, and they had been, this was the first group that had access early to computers and that kind of thing. And now a decade later, we're asking the same question. What are we going to do with Gen Z?
Right.
Right? So now
Yep.
they've been born with technology. Millennials grew up with technology, but these guys have been born with technology. And
Right.
when I think about what's next, if we use this pivot lens, we're still looking at the world through that same lens. We haven't figured out we need to do, these kids and young people are going to do what they do. How do we cultivate them to be the best that they can be without trying to stigmatize or label them, because that gives us the same lens of looking at the world or looking at problems.
Yep. I'm flashing back to a time when I first came into this philosophy, way back in 2001, and and looking at it, and I remember one of our teachers told us in a class once that every time they teach this class, the students come in the door with a greater understanding than the group before them.
Mm.
Well, that was 20 years ago. So I got to believe that most of the people coming in the door today have not only a greater understanding than I do, but probably have a greater understanding than I did when I graduated that class. And now they got it coming in the door. And I think in some ways we lose some people because they come in the door and the first thing they hear is philosophy and example and activity that's more related to what was happening 20 years ago than to what's happening today.
Right. And additionally, I think 20 years ago, the ideas of meditation and journaling and visioning and some of the primary spiritual tools and practices are now commonplace, right?
Right.
You can learn about journaling working at IBM. You can work for Coca-Cola or Amazon or some of these other major corporations. They have meditation rooms set up. And so these tools that we had back then that weren't as popular are available now everywhere. And so
Right.
if that's all we're giving, if that's all we're providing, then we're not looking in the mirror, right? We're still dealing with a lens,
Yep.
and we have to fix that. Yeah, we got to fix it.
I'm
Full
reflecting
stop.
it like Insight Timer. Insight Timer wasn't even a twinkle in their eye, in anybody's eye 20 years ago. But we still had flip phones. Remember, folks? You had to hit 3 times to get to the right letter on the dial pad to text. And so things like Insight Timer weren't even in the human idea. Now it all existed in the divine. We just had to humanly catch up to that, and technology had to catch up to that. But now I'm with you. Why do I need to go to a center? Why do I need to travel across town? Why do I even need to walk down the block? Why do I need to go to a yoga class? Because I can get my spirituality right here. There it is, folks. There's the entire universe, all in a little electronic box.
Yeah.
All
And
right,
so
you can turn us off. We're done.
yeah, well, and the thing is now, and it was again back then. It was, and this has been around for a while, but it was in a little avant-garde community. This whole idea of experiential, right? They had the Outward Bounds, and they had the guys who were doing the Vision Quest, and they had the guys and gals who were uh, uh, doing some hiking or camping and having dream sessions, but that was a small group of people, right?
Right.
But now that idea of having life as an experiential is becoming back more in vogue and more widely accepted and asked for, right? You start previously, if you start talking about going out and camping, that was a hippie community or ultra outdoors community. But now people want to go and have those kind of experiences.
Right.
And so, my mind, the question becomes in all spheres, whether it's political, philosophical, ideological, or spiritual, how do we begin as leaders of those particular threads of life? How do we begin to provide experientials, i.e., how do people get involved and then begin to understand the importance of any one of those and be willing to support it, not just physically, but monetarily and ideologically? Because that's another piece that's happening now, is that monetarily things are not being funded as they should. And I know the shutdown and people's jobs, but that's an issue.
Yeah.
And then one other thing, real quick, is ideological. People are doing cherry picking. They pick a little bit from here, they pick a little bit from there, and there's no foundational piece. And then people get lost sometime, because if you don't understand the congruency of all those, you get out on a limb and it's a skinny limb, and now you're in trouble.
Yes. Yes, very true. That skinny limb gets people all the time, because that's where, when we, it's there's a both and coming through for me in this, because New Thought, we teach people cherry pick, use what works for you. If that practice doesn't work for you, you don't have to do that practice. It isn't dependent upon, the law will work no matter what. The question is, how can we best work it? What technology allows us to work it? But people get into this cherry pick place where there isn't a really strong basis and a strong foundation. So when something does go awry, we're left with absolute disbelief. How could it not work? And then people fall off, and then they bail out, and then they think, oh, it's all just woo woo, and this stuff doesn't really work. It's just all smoke and mirrors and blah 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 and blah blah blah. But what we know, I look at you and I have had a long friendship now. We've watched each other grow. We've watched our families grow. We've watched our kids, each other's kids, become adults and move into the world and meet with success because of their understanding and adherence to these principles.
Yes.
Because of their practice of these principles. Yes. But not just in a TikTok world, it's real easy to get caught up in the flavor of the moment.
Yeah. And one thing about the kids who grew up in this philosophy, in a lot of cases, they just use the principles. They don't talk about the principles. They just use them. Right. Yep. Whereas everybody else is talking about them, and they're like, "Yeah, well, okay,
yeah, I'm not going to use them."
I'm just going to.
And by the way, Dad, I don't need to go to church on Sunday to hear about them, because I've been using them all week. I could go there and tell you all about what you're not doing and how to do it better, and I don't need to go there.
Yeah, because I'm doing it, and I'm having an experiential interaction with them. And then in my mind, it becomes like sailing, right? Yeah. So when you're sailing, if you've ever been sailing in a sailboat, not on a motorboat, and you're riding with the wind, and you're set, there's some adjustment as the wind changes, as your position changes from the original destination. There's some adjustments you have to do, right? You can't just get in the boat, set a direction, and think you're going to go straight there, because if you mess around and get off by 3 degrees, I think it is, you'll be miles away from where you intended to be.
Yep, exactly. Somebody just shared with me that Sailboats are not the only example of that either.
Ooh.
Planes, when
Yes.
they're on autopilot. Now, when a pilot's flying the plane, they can keep it pretty straight and pretty much online. But and if there's any pilots in the audience and I'm totally wrong, let me know. Drop it in the comment box. That's cool. We'll readjust. But my understanding is that when you put a plane on autopilot, it's much the same thing is happening. It's not as dramatic. Maybe it's not as much of attack as you get on a sailboat. It's much more of a minute adjustment, but the wind blows at 40,000 feet. And if it hits that plane, it blows that plane off course. Again, 3 degrees can be a long way. You miss your airport. So the computers make those tiny adjustments, keeping that plane so it's heading in the right direction, even if it's not directly straight ahead all the time.
Right. Yeah. And so then the ultimate question becomes, what do we as leaders of organizations, what adjustments do we have to make right now? What's next as the wind is blowing, as the current is changing, as the temperature is changing? All these things will affect how we maneuver in this open space, whether it's air open space or water open space, right?
Yep.
And we can relay those metaphors directly to our lives. And in every sphere, whether it's individually, communal, organizational, or collective as a globe. And and what winds up happening when you're off by that 1 degree or 2 degrees, you don't notice that you're off because you're in open space.
Right.
Right. You got to check in with your compass. You got to have a destination of what the compass say, and you got to keep checking in.
Yep.
And most of us are on autopilot. We're not checking in. We're not doing the lens to mirror work, right?
Right. Yeah, we do that on Sundays at church, right? That's when I do that. I don't do that every moment, and I joke because I'm sure you can agree with me here, Z. One of the things I've learned in ministry is every day is those minute adjustments. Every single day, even in the midst of conversation, in a single conversation, sometime I might go into a meeting thinking this is what we're here for and this is what we're about and this is where we're going. And before I know it, nope, the course has been changed and we're making adjustments and we're having a different conversation. Now I might be able to steer it back to where I wanted to go,
Right.
but we've got to be willing to be flexible in the experience and allow for those subtle give and take, those subtle tack and readjustments to our course to get to where we're going.
Yeah, and that's key, right? I mean, and sometimes, if you're sailing, sometimes you may want to take a detour, right? If you're going along the coast and you see a set of islands or a port that you want to go over to, you may go over to that port and refuel and restock your supplies and grab a good meal. But then you got to get back on course if you're trying to go from Florida to the Bahamas or wherever it is you might be going, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this. I refer to this often. This statement by Alan Watts is that we have to live life in oscillation between macro, micro, and normal vision, because at the micro level, at the macro level, I get good vision.
Yeah.
At the micro level, I get great detail. At the optic vision, I can take in a lot of the surroundings, but I can get stuck in either one. If I get stuck in the micro, I'm in the details, but no direction.
Yep.
If I'm in the vision, I got great direction, but ain't nothing getting done, right? And if I stay in the middle in the optic lane, I'm working, but I can't see any results. And so we have to live life in this way of oscillation so that we can check in with what the destination is. Am I still on course? Is the detail right? And begin to take inventory or look in the mirror to see what's going on.
Yep. Or is it time for me to get my parachute on and let somebody else fly this plane? Yeah. I'm out. You take over. Yeah. which happens, which is actually part of the whole scheme of life, the whole way it all works, and especially in spiritual communities, you will see people all the time moving from one piece to another, and you see spiritual communities do that too. Set out in direction of one social activity, social action type work, and realize, I think we're really called to something else here. To me, now again, that's where, and this isn't going to surprise anybody that listens to me at all, but this is where I love to rely on the visioning process and be in a place where I can be receptive and open to a greater experience of intuition and inspiration in which way we're going and in really what's next.
Yeah, well, and you brought up something there. There's this idea of compass, since we're talking about flying and sailing. There's compass and time, right? If I'm dealing with time, I'm dealing with things and control for the most part. If I'm dealing with compass, I'm dealing with direction and mission or objective.
Yeah.
And since we know from experience, most of us, I would say, that I can be more diligent to my mission and direction than I can be to control time and try to control things, right? Because if I got a mission and a direction, I can work with any time, I can work with anything, any condition, because I know where I'm going. I have a vision. But if I don't, I'm going to get caught up in things and time, and I'm going to be in real big trouble.
Yep. What's that old saying? Where there is no vision, the people perish.
People perish. And so
the people perish.
Great for the talk. What's next? And I think we as communities of spiritual faith tradition, we have to begin to get more. In the Black church, there's a song, "Give Me That Old Time Religion," right? It was good enough for me. It's good for my dear mother, my dear father. Well, that concept of the old time religion was people were in service. People worked together. People looked at a situation and rallied to do something about it. And that's what we are missing today. We got people doing some great individual things, but individually, we might not be able to do it all. But collectively, we can do a lot more with a lot less energy and go a lot further by getting involved. And so, one of the next things is what is your community's sweet spot?
Yeah.
What are you known for? What is your community known for? Or what are you known for? Well,
that's a big question, and that's one we're going to try to answer after the break. Give us just a moment of your time, folks, to say hello and thank you to some of our sponsors. Z and I will be back. We're gonna dive into that in the next segment. What is it that you're known for, or perhaps what is it you want to be known for? Stay with us. We'll be right back. More on New Thought Today in just a moment. And we're back with more of New Thought today here on the New Thought Media Network. We're taking that deep dive and looking at what's next in the world of New Thought. And Z, before the break, you kind of got us started on this. We've got to, I think each community, let's call it a North Star. Each community needs that North Star, that place where they can find a sense of community and a sense of community commitment, not just, oh, that's Joe's idea, or that's Karen's idea, or that's Barb's idea, but a vision for the whole community to rally behind and work towards. It feels like in some ways we perhaps got a little sidetracked maybe in churches that lost sight of that, communities that lost sight of that. In classwork, we'd call this minister-centric versus vision-centric. And it seems like now more than ever, any community that isn't vision-centric, I think, is going to have a hard time navigating the coming years.
Yeah. Because it in that same, before we left, we talked about the difference between a clock and a compass kind of approach to doing things, right? The clock is about efficiency, where the compass is about effectiveness, right? The clock is about managing and controlling. The compass is about leading and directing. So these are the kinds of things we got to look at when we look at management. And in terms of time and the clock, we look at independence, whereas with the compass, we look at interdependence. And so the question, how are we going to establish ourselves as leaders, as communities, for what we're known for? So, for example, if I need someone to help me do a galvanizing the community to help a cause, well, I'm going to go to John for that, because I know John knows how to do that. He's known for that, right? He can take a situation. If I want to find out how to do fundraising, I'm going to go to Mary, because Mary is excellent at that. And then how do we do that at the community level? What is your community known for?
Right.
That community is known for bringing in new people.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. And there's that. So there's a part of not only what are we known for, but how do we leverage that to bring that into a new world paradigm, a new world view. So I'm going to dip into some spiral dynamics for a little bit here, because over the years, we've talked a lot about the evolution of human consciousness. And if we look at that on the model of spiral dynamics, more and more people, and therefore more and more organizations, are joining what's called the second tier. Now, the second tier is really a place where we let go of the individualized ego and really start to keep our focus and therefore our efforts on more global type service. Ideas that impact the planet rather than maybe just ourselves. New Thought communities, well, for the longest time, our bread and butter, if you will, financially as well as philosophically, have been those self-help type classes. How to get clear on who you are, how to get your house in order, how to get your spiritual practice put together, how to do these things that are generally based upon bringing the person to their own self-actualization. I think leaders today, we've got, if we're not already being prepared, if you're not already prepared, let's start to get prepared on how we lead in the second tier, in this new I don't like using that term, but in the coming years, in a world such as this, how do we lead from that second tier rather than just continuing to perpetuate what's always been done?
Yeah. Because and that's a key point there when you make that self-help thing, right? In that previously, unfortunately, or fortunately, self-help back in the day was got a bad rap, right? Oh,
Exactly.
you doing self-help stuff? What's wrong with you? You off a little bit or whatever, right? Uh,
Yep.
but now and it's still room to grow, but I think now more people, especially some of the younger people, given the access, they that self-help kind of idea is incorporated in their everyday life
Right.
to a certain degree, right? And so to have a class that establishes that we do need self-help. I mean, like younger kids now are seeking counseling more and more. And it's not just because their friends, had a tragedy or they committed suicide or whatever. It's because they're working with something that they can't get through or that they can't quite understand that they're trying to get in handle on, right?
Right.
And so now, how do we, as the ones who used to provide those kinds of things, continue to provide them because we give them a different flavor, but how do we go to the next step?
Yep. Exactly. It's interesting. I love the point you're making because just as I said earlier, the newer students come in with a greater understanding off from the base.
Yeah.
More and more kids are seeking therapy, are seeking counseling, and not because anything's wrong. Now, here's the difference. When I was a kid, if I said, "Mom, Dad, I need some therapy, I need some count," it would have immediately been, "What's wrong with you?" And truthfully, the paradigm that was therapy at that point, let's say 40 years ago, was based around a broken heal and we're going to fix you kind of model, where today kids are being accepted more for who they really are. They're coming in with a greater awareness of how all this stuff works. And in a lot of ways, I think it would be irresponsible as a parent to not say, yeah, let's find you somebody to talk to. You're always welcome to talk to me, but let's let you talk to somebody completely impartial so that we can all have a better relationship. And every so often I'll go with you and sit in too, just to make sure I'm not that I'm playing, that I'm accountable, that I'm playing according to the same rules, and that we're
Right.
really speaking the same language.
Yeah, because what happens, how are you going to talk to me if you don't have the courage, you're not used to it, about a trauma you experienced, and I'm the one who caused the trauma. Uh, and so
And if you can't traumatize your kids, I mean, who can you traumatize? So
exactly,
as parents, we do that unwittingly.
yeah,
Right. We don't try. I've never known any parent to say, "Oh, I'm planning to really screw up this kid," but it happens.
well, it's a perfect example, both of those, of the mirror and the lens, right? So the lens that we used to look at therapy was something is wrong with you. Now the lens there's been some mirror work on that, and now the lens, because we will always have a lens and a mirror to work with, right?
Right.
But now the lens is a clearer lens, it's a wider aperture, it's a further thing, right? And so now, because of that mirror work, that reflective work, therapy is now that lens is, I can use this just to make sure to do a check-in and make sure I'm grounded.
Yeah.
I may have a little thing here, but I want to make sure, right? And then
Yep.
with the parents, the same thing.
Yeah. Making sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, yeah. And in spiritual communities, that's what's happening. And now I'll say this.
Okay. Wait. All right. Hold on that first, because you just struck me. That's what we need. We need group therapy for spiritual communities.
Yes.
Tuesday nights at 5, and if you don't make enough of them, we're gonna have to have some sort of an intervention, because you're not. And here's where this all comes back to for me.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I don't think anybody even knew the term emotional intelligence, and if you did, you were incredibly well educated. Today, much like meditation and other forms of spiritual practice, the concept of emotional intelligence is everywhere. And I see it in my newsfeed all the time. So and so just gave a great 3-minute lesson on emotional intelligence. Some business leader just gave the, unknowingly or non intentionally, but was able to. And our kids are growing up today with a greater capacity and understanding of emotional intelligence than many of the adults in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, and that's an extenuation of what I was going to say, in that because of that, it takes longer, fortunately or unfortunately, for people to find their group, right?
Yeah.
That are you needing the same kind of insights and needing the same kind of experientials or the same kind of avenues to express, because people are a little more honed in. They may not understand all of the rigors, but they're a little more honed in on who they are or what they want to do, or those kinds of, and the community helps create that. And so as a church community, a spiritual community, as a religious community, whatever you define your community as, how do you interact with it? And how does it interact? It has to be a give and take. Everybody's got to give something. Everybody's got to take a little bit. And so I think the new frontier is, how do we begin to state who we are and then begin to allow people to experience that, so they know if they're in the right group. It's like you sign up for art class and you wind up the first day and they drawing math problems on the board. You're like, I'm in the wrong class. I didn't sign up for calculus. I signed up for sculpture or watercolors or something. And so we have to figure that out.
Yep. I've got a great example of that, because recently, from many of you know, I'm an old peace, love, and hippie. And while I keep my hair a little shorter than it used to be, that ethos, those principles are still there. And recently I was attracted into a group, an online group of folks that talk about music and talk about the old days and this and that and the other thing. And there's a lot of different opinions in there. And on one conversation, I decided, and the beauty of places like Facebook are you can just drop the comment, walk away, and come back a couple days later. You don't have to be in a direct conversation. So I dropped a comment that I knew might be a little controversial. I knew there were some people that probably wouldn't agree with me, and I knew there would probably be some people that did. But what happened is, I walked away for a couple of days. I came back, and the amount of aggression, the amount of attack, the names that I was being called by people that was their only interaction with me whatsoever, was this one thing. And the way it was, not only, I can handle it. If you want to call me an idiot, call me an idiot. But if we're supposed to be building a community that works for all, and no one else is willing to step up and say, wait a minute, dude, you can't just do that to people. You can't just throw that at people. You got to. And it really pointed to me that, look, this isn't my community to fix. This isn't my community and let's get away from fix, but this isn't my community to be a part of, because it's going to take so much energy and so much time and so much effort to help a handful of people see that this ain't the way we do it anymore. Right. You don't just attack people, call them names, and then run away. You want to call me a name, hang out, let's have a conversation. You want to call me a name, that's fine. But where are the leaders that step in and say, hold on a minute, that goes against this community's principles, that goes against our practices. And I trust we see that in New Thought and in New Thought communities, people willing to stand. But sometimes you got to be willing to walk away and say, nah, this ain't me.
Yeah, well, you made me think about something when you said that. for any old CB radio enthusiasts out there, right? At some point doing that, if you really got an attachment and fell in love with CB radios, right? The next logical step in a lot of places was to go into ham radio, right?
Right.
Now, the requirements to get a CB radio was to go down, spend your money, get the radio, learn a little bit of the lingo, turn it on, click the button, and breaker 19, right? Uh,
Yep.
Now, if you wanted to move to a ham radio, now you got to start learning about electronics. You have to get a license to be a ham radio, right? So now they're both radios. They do very similar things. And if we use that analogy as communities, I may start out as a CB radio guy, but I want to go to ham. Well, I got to move up to another group, another facility, another everything. I don't necessarily have to shun my CB community because that's where I came from, but I'm moving to this, and we really coexist. And that's how we have to start looking at things, I believe, to see the similarities, to understand those interdependencies as opposed to the individualities that we talked about more with the clock or the compass, and begin to be compass driven.
Yeah. You spark a whole conversation that I don't want to have today. You just popped the top off of a rabbit hole that we could go down and take us another half hour, 45 minutes. We'd be here all day. So I ain't going there.
All right, don't go there. We'll save that for the next time.
We'll save that for the next time. How about instead we say thank you to our sponsors and our organizational sponsors and individual donors. Give LZ and I a chance to take a sip of water, but we're going to come back with a little bit more and our final thoughts. Please don't go away. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more on New Thought Today. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Yes. Thank you to all of our organizational sponsors and individual donors. It's thanks to your help that we're able to take this mighty message of the New Thought movement out into the world and support communities, leaders, and organizations across the planet in bringing new thought into mainstream consciousness. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing here. And Z, before we go, I do want to invite everybody, because we never talk about this, but that first part, our new community platform is up and running. If you head over to the website, ntmedia.org, there's a link at the top that says community. You go through there, you follow the links, and it'll help you to set up a free account on our brand new community platform, a place that is reserved specifically for those of New Thought Media to connect, communicate, and help create this world that works better for all. So please take advantage of that. Join us over there on our community platform. All right, Z, we've got just a little bit of time left. What hasn't been said, and what hasn't been said?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I think we have to begin to know who we are. Now, that's a loaded question. That's a whole nother 45. But by that, I mean, we have to be self-aware. We have to become more self-aware. Yeah. We have to begin to be creative, or more creative in how we articulate that, the results rather of that self-awareness. And then we have to be willing to take a chance, right? If we look at any musician or author or whatever athlete that we admire, at some point they did some self-reflection, they did some inventory, self-awareness, and then took a risk to step out on that. I'm going to step on this stage and sing this song. I'm going to try out for the wide receiver. I'm going to go and see if I can be the point guard. I'm going to go see if I can run this organization. And that's what we have to do. We got to be, as they say, we got to put ourselves out there a little bit more, and not play it safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. As one of my mentors would say, if you take life casual, you will end up a casualty. And I don't think any of us want to end up a casualty. So we got to stop taking life very casual.
Exactly. Right on. No casualties here. We don't need any of that. So, no. But I agree with what you're saying. And, it reminds me, we always can come back to Socrates and know thyself. And I think spiritual communities across the country, across the globe, can do a great job at helping each of us to know ourselves a bit better, a whole lot better, perhaps even all the way to absolutely know ourselves. And that becomes the time where it is so important to step out as a leader, to step up, stand out, and be a leader in whatever it might be. Maybe, it might just be leading a discussion at a coffee shop. It might be getting involved with something bigger in your community. But I really believe the time is now that it is imperative for those that understand the New Thought philosophy, that have followed this philosophy, that teach this philosophy, that call themselves leaders in this philosophy, start standing up and standing out in the greater world, in the greater community. And as I said, coming back from the break, making this mainstream, taking this to a mainstream consciousness, making maybe we need a name change. Maybe New Thought isn't going to be able to carry the weight as a name, but the principles remain the same. And it's time to activate those principles in our lives and in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
No question about it.
Yes, sir. And
I can't think. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's all the news just fit to be print at this moment in time.
Exactly. I don't think we could say anything more about it. So why belabor the point? Let's get on to the rest of the day. Folks, I do want to thank you for joining us today here on New Thought Media Network. We do have Spanish language programming later this evening, 7 o'clock Mountain Time, a full week of broadcast programming. And again, please head on over to our website, ntmedia.org. Check out what's happening over there as well. Until next time, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.